Looking to grow your podcast audience? Me too. Stay tuned to find out how. Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, it's very meta. We've got two podcasters talking about podcasting. So a podcast about podcasting for all the physicians out there who want to start a podcast, where they're starting it and they want to grow it. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So we have Adam Schaeuble. He is a full-time podcaster, podcasting business consultant, and the host of the top 100 ranked entrepreneurship podcast, Podcasting Business School. So he helps service providers like us learn how to leverage our podcast to build an online business and get more clients. So there are going to be physicians out there who are looking to find more patients. There are going to be physicians out there who are just looking to grow their show, like me, or there are going to be physicians out there who are looking to, really hone their show so that they can turn listeners into clients or patients, depending. So we're going to be talking about all that today. Adam Schaeuble, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Brad, I'm excited to be here, man. I know there's a lot of what I refer to as podcrastinators out there in the medical space. Y'all think like, oh, I got this idea for a show and they haven't launched it yet, or maybe they have launched it. And like you said, and they're kind of figuring out that it's a little bit difficult. So I'm here to solve some pain points and you all are trying to help people, like with health and, get more clients so you can get your hands on them and help them with your specialty. So let's make sure that can happen.
Make sure they're in the right hands, our hands, right?
Yes.
So exactly. Okay. So first of all, we're going to get right into it. What is the secret sauce to growing an audience? And I know what some people might say is, well, it's not just about growing those audiences, it's about converting those audience members into clients or patients. But let's just start with the audience. Our metric is listeners. What's the secret sauce there? Because I've heard be a regular guest. I've heard make good content. I've heard make sure you're putting out content regularly and predictably. Like that's what everybody says. And there are plenty of podcasters that do that and their show doesn't grow. What's your answer?
All right. So I think there's a step to take before all of that. I refer to it as organic discoverability. Organic discoverability. I quit using the term SEO, but that's kind of what I mean here. But I quit using SEO because people get confused with like their website and their blog and all these other variations of SEO, search engine optimization. And really all I'm worried about is I look at Apple and I look at Spotify. Those are the two big dogs where people find podcasts. And I look at the search bar. I go, what are people putting in there that I should be showing up for? So how do we make sure when they search certain things, I am showing up? My show has the best opportunity to show up for that search. That's where it all starts.
So you're not saying that people are finding my show by listening to someone else's show. They're
Correct.
Not finding my show by finding me on social media and my message really resonates with them. They're finding my show in a search bar. And so optimizing for that search bar. We know they're a podcast listener and they're looking for something, might be the thing.
Yeah. And it's not untrue that people do find me. Like people will listen to this show. They might come over and listen to my show because I was on this show. They might find me because of a TikTok video or an Instagram reel. But most of my ideal listeners, and especially most of my ideal listeners that become my ideal clients, 99% of them find me because they search the phrase podcasting tips on Apple or Spotify, or they search podcasts about podcasting, or they search online business tips and Podcasting Business School pops up. So let's reverse engineer why this is happening. All right. With organic discoverability, the thing that has the absolute most power with how you show up and where you show up with that search bar is the name of your podcast. Some rules. This is going to help a lot of people. I've had people that just what we're going to talk about for the next 5 minutes, you can potentially at least double your downloads. I've had people 10x their downloads in like 4 to 6 weeks just because of organic discoverability. How nice would it be? Like we're all just beating our head against the wall, social media, we're paying people to do all that stuff for us. We're doing it ourselves. We're trying to be on all these other shows. How nice would it be if we just change the title of our show, add a few little herbs and spices, and now our ideal people are organically finding us. We don't have to pay anybody for that. We don't have to like spend time on social media for that. It's kind of a set it and forget it technique. So,
all right, Colonel Sanders, let's see your
yes,
special blend of herbs and spices.
Special blend of herbs and spices. So the naming formula, my perfect podcast name formula, I've got 3 rules. All right. So when I read a podcast name, the number 1 rule is I want to know exactly what it's about. You're not there to explain it. You better not have some cool creative joke, inside joke of a name of the show, or you need somebody to explain it.
You're killing me. I love inside jokes and double entendres and nuance.
Yes. No one ever found a show because it had a cute name. Like, oh, that sounds cute, because those are unsearchable. No one is searching. Search the word awesome. People put the word awesome in the name of their show all the time. Search the word awesome. It's all kinds of random stuff. Like, you don't know what that's about. So rule number 1, I want to know exactly what it's about when I read the title. Rule number 2, I want to know exactly who it's for when I read the title. So who's the intended audience? Rule number 3, I need at least 2 really strong searchable keywords in the name. Ideally, the first word of the title is a keyword. All right. So that's kind of like a bonus tip. So my favorite example, or a template, I should say, to use, in parentheses, a big keyword, tips for X, Y, and Z. So weight loss tips for stay-at-home moms, or weight loss tips for millennials, or
that was just on your show.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just
it was single mothers was on your show. Yeah.
So XYZ tips for X, Y, and Z. So I've got a limited series podcast called Podcast Monetization Tips for Online Coaches, Consultants, and Service Providers. It's like email marketing conversations for business owners. It's not cute. It's not like creative.
Just do it, right?
It's vanilla. I always tell people, like, let the name of your show be really vanilla. Let the content be where you get creative and shine. That's where all the creative juices happen. But nobody can find that content if it's poorly named. I always tell people, don't let that be, the number 1 reason why people don't find you.
So that sounds like a long name. So one, you have your, I guess, you, right? Not you specifically, but like you have your audience that needs to be named. You've got your business that needs to be named. And now you're saying 2 keywords. That sounds like a really long name.
Yeah. So Podcasting Business School is the name of my show. That's the name of my brand. But the full title of my show, if you look on Apple and Spotify, it's Podcasting Business School, : the next part I change every quarter. That's another thing. Like I change what I call my title extension. So right now it's like online business tips for entrepreneurs, service providers, and coaches, or something like that. So that's the whole name. But on the show, I never mention that. On social media, never mention it. The art, never mention it. All those keywords are in there. So when people are searching it and they say, oh, I searched podcasting tips, Podcasting Business School, online business tips for blah, 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 blah. Oh, those are words I use to describe myself. They're seeing themselves in the name of the show, and I get first click. Because if there's 10, 15 other images on there, I want to get first click, because there's really no second click. If they like the first one, they're not going back and going, what was that 4th show that showed up in that search the other day that I didn't click on? It's a big deal. So for you, for your show, what would you say are a couple really important keywords? Let's kind of keyword brainstorm a little bit. Like obviously,
so
I like the word physician.
To doctoring, because I wanted physician and doctor to both show up. Now, I don't know if doctoring, when you search doctor, if it shows up, because doctoring is a nonsense made up word. Yeah. So I guess I should probably change it.
No one is searching doctoring.
Unless they're trying to counterfeit something. Then I'm showing up. Great.
You got all the counterfeiting audience on lockdown. So, I mean, there's some options here. A total rebrand is an option, but for you, Physician's Guide to Doctoring, then we add a title extension and go : XYZ tips for X, Y, and Z. And you don't have to ever mention after the colon like I do. It's just, we're putting keywords and searchable terms in the title line because it has the most power. So it could be like business and client acquisition tips for healthcare providers. Like, I think the word healthcare provider would be really good. People are searching those, or if you have a specific type of physician, have more business conversations, like the word business, the word entrepreneurship, healthcare provider, therapist, all those words are really good for searchable terms. And the more we can get in there, the better. And
so when I show up on their podcast player, what is it going to look like?
You can look at mine. It looks like a big old bunch of words on there.
But it doesn't matter because you're on their podcast player.
And your art is clean.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like they see that and they see the word jumble and then like, oh, this like they don't even notice. Like people don't, I literally switch my title extension every 90 days to try out new keywords and no one ever notices.
So it doesn't need to be a change of, so it stays, so for my example, it stays Physician's Guide to Doctoring because all of my my mugs and my business card and all the rest of the stuff and my clip art costs money for me to change my clip art. Like I got to pay someone to do that.
Yeah.
But all we're changing is the extension, and that can be like almost a word salad. Okay. So if we want like high yield keywords, is there like a search engine that we can use? Is there an app that like helps us? Because now also we want to make sure we're showing up in the people that we want to show up with, right? Like for me, it's other doctors, but for like that, someone might have a specialty podcast. Like it might be other plastic surgeons, right? Like you're trying to be the plastic surgeon, right? And so you're like putting all this stuff out there for plastic surgeons because they want them, they want to learn from you or your aesthetics practice or whatever it is, right? So how do I know if it's a good keyword?
Right now, I'll tell you a couple facts. AI sucks at this. Like if you ask AI, create a great podcast name, they're doing the creative name, like the show title thing. So it's not a great resource. And I'm kind of like, I don't want to say like I'm pioneering this, but I'm one of the only people out there really like saying, hey, this is really, really important. And the first word of the title is really, really important. I'm scaring people going, the name of your show is the number one reason why people are not finding your show. Oh my God. The best resource you have is your audience. So when you talk to your audience, whether like,
how did you find me?
Yeah. Do you remember what you were looking for? People reach out, like people DM me on Instagram or send me an email all the time. They have a question or whatever. And we have our little back and forth. And I always finish with, hey, how did you find me? What were you looking for? And that's how I figured out podcasting tips. I was like, I need to use that everywhere because there's two other zones that we need to be paying attention to keywords. So we got the name of the show. There's the host description, the description of your show, wherever you host it, like the about this show, little blurb, all the keywords need to be in there. That's very powerful. That's second most power.
Okay.
And then the name of each individual episode. So
their AI can actually be useful.
Yes.
Because you can be like, I need a description of my show that uses these words. And then you give the AI those words and you might have to change it so it actually makes sense. But like you can give it this word salad of keywords and it can make you a sentence and then you kind of work it from there.
Now, let me give you another pro tip on that. So on the host description, use AI, write your initial word salad paragraph, and then start a second paragraph. And you guys can look at my host description for Podcasting Business School and use it as a template. You start a second paragraph, something along the lines. If you find yourself asking questions such as the following, this show is a great resource for you. And you list like what I call the Google questions, any Google question that your typical episode will answer, and just, you can always add to it. But the closer you can get it to an actual question that people would search on Google, your show will start pulling and showing up for those searches on Google. So now we're optimizing for a Google search and for podcast search bar in Apple and Spotify. And that's pretty darn powerful.
Wait, so what you're doing is you're putting in like the first couple words of a question and then you're letting Google complete it? Is that what you're doing?
No, I mean, I just know like, okay, so for example, for my show, I'll say, if you find yourself asking questions such as the following, Podcasting Business School is a great resource for you. And I'll start listing questions like, how do I launch a podcast? How do I make money as a podcaster? How do I get more podcast downloads? How do I convert more podcast listeners into paying clients? I just ask all the questions that I know my people are always asking me. And I'm like, but you can also go into Google and start typing in those questions. And just like you said, the Google kind of finishes it off and you see some of the top ranking questions with that verbiage. Use that also. And just however many characters you have in that host, use all of them.
Oh, but it also gives you similar questions, right? Yeah. Like Google, you type your question into Google and it gives you similar questions. And then there's like a pull down bar where you can answer those questions. So that's what you're saying. You're like, I'm going to ask this question. And then it's got those similar questions. And so you're going to use those.
And put them all in there. Yep.
So you're putting the actual question in there.
Yeah. And write it as a question. And then if you want to double down on this method, start looking at your episodes and start putting the titles in that Google question format. And that will make the actual episode itself more likely to pull up as well. So you can kind of layer all this together. And then once you start getting a dozen episodes, 20, 25 episodes with all this in place, you're going to start seeing some really nice growth. And all of a sudden the right people are showing up, and again, it's organically happening. Like every single week I'm getting emails and DMs and people are like, I searched podcast about podcasting and there you were. And
Yeah.
I've listened to 30 episodes already. I'm like, that is awesome. I didn't have to pay a dime for that. I didn't have to spend any time on social media for that. Like, Brad, my biggest dream is I just want to have a podcast. I want to exit social media and I want to make money and get the right people and just clients coming to. I don't mind doing like my weekly newsletter. I want to do podcast and weekly newsletter, nothing else, and just
Adam,
say goodbye to social media.
You and I share the same dream because posting on social media is for me such a chore. My wife loves it. Like she really enjoys the process of like the creative process of creating. I like this. I like sitting down and talking to people and learning from them and then having to like post about it. And like, it's just such a chore. So I'm totally with you. So all this stuff hopefully will get us off of social media.
It would be awesome.
And then less of a time suck where I've just like wasted my life scrolling because I thought it would be good for my business. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So in that same vein, so just to recap, our title, we can keep our basic title, but we're going to add a colon and then an extension on that title that uses the who are we, who is our audience, and a couple of keywords that they are going to be searching for if they're looking for our content.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got the description where we're going to, optimize the keywords in that description. And then we're going to help Google. We're going to ask the questions that we think our listeners are asking so that we don't not only pop up in the search bar for Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but we pop up in a Google search if someone's searching us, and that's how they're going to find us. Okay.
Correct. Now, since you're in the medical and health space, another very effective strategy is like, if somebody has a show where they are addressing a certain type of illness or disease or something like ADHD or cancer, like whatever that is that you are talking about, use that word. So if you have a show where you're talking about helping people that have cancer or ADHD, cancer, ADHD need to be in the name of the show because any sort of illness or medical sickness or anything, that's what people search. Like if you have cancer, you put cancer in the search bar.
Give a caveat to that because we've had like medical marketing experts on the show before. Providers search by diagnosis. Patients search by symptoms. So like I might be someone who treats sinusitis and I want to catch more people that have chronic sinus infections so I could do sinus surgery on them and help them, right? They're not looking for chronic sinusitis. They're looking for postnasal drip, facial pressure, nasal congestion, runny nose, chronic cough. Like they're looking for symptoms doctors look for. So make sure that and you can even include both, right? Because you're giving us a lot of latitude here.
Yep.
So patients think in terms of, or look in terms of symptoms often, not always, right? Because if you're a cancer doctor, to your point, like let's say you're a surgical oncologist, you're a neurosurgeon who takes care of like brain tumors, right? Like patients are going to look that up because they have the diagnosis already. They have brain tumor or they know what their diagnosis is. So that's a different situation. But often you need to cover for both.
And I think on the podcast like you think about Spotify and Apple Podcasts specifically, like if somebody has cancer and they're looking for resources at that point, like they've been diagnosed and it's like, they're going to search cancer support, cancer, healing tip. Like the word cancer is going to probably be in that search once they're looking for support solutions for what they're dealing with. I've got a couple clients that have ADHD podcasts, and once we put, it's funny, they both have ADHD and their title reflected is like all over the place podcast. Yeah. And then we put ADHD in the names of their shows. Oh my God, explosion. Because that's what people are searching.
Nobody's searching all over the place. Everyone's searching ADHD. Right. Yeah. Because they have the diagnosis, right? Or they think they have the diagnosis. Maybe something different. Okay. So you mentioned social media. So I want to ask you a quick question about that because, social media does have a role, as much as you and I both have disdain for it. We have finite resources, we have finite time, we have finite money. Is the best approach the shotgun approach where we're putting like just taking repurposed clips and we're putting them on all of the socials? Or do we really focus our time on one and like really make a stand on one social media? Because you can't do both. You can't do both well.
Right.
So which one would you recommend?
The goal ultimately is to find that home base, that one that you just really feel like you're getting the most juice out of the squeeze and the most, their time is well spent. But I just recorded an episode about this today. Like, you have to be willing to pivot and tweak and adjust. So example, Instagram has always been my home base for like the last 2-3 years, to the point where I quit posting on TikTok, LinkedIn, no thanks. Like, I just shunned all the other platforms.
Yeah.
And then Instagram really started stalling out, started getting really hard to get any engagement. So I was like, I started asking around. A lot of people are like, man, you really should reconsider LinkedIn. It's very active.
I would think LinkedIn. I mean, it's called podcasting business school, and LinkedIn is business.
Yeah. So I've reopened the LinkedIn window. I've had a lot of success there. I've had a lot of success on Threads. Like, I'm re-experimenting a little bit. Now, let me give you a tip that will be applicable to everybody that's trying to do anything on social media for like time optimization. A lot of podcasters, there's kind of some traditional strategies. People will release an episode and like, I don't have time to promote it, I'm not doing it. So they don't. Or they just do an announcement that the episode is live, and that's kind of their big one post. Or they'll drip a little bit over until the next episode drops. So like 7 days or something like that. So the most important days for promotion is what I call the 72-hour window. So a new episode goes live. We want to promote that thing and optimize promotion for the 72 hours after it goes live. Okay. Past that is okay, but it's not optimal. So if you are normally doing one, episode promo post per day with a video clip for 7 days, put them all in the first 3 days. Go AMs and PMs or whatever you got to do. But I would compress it, because it's an algorithm thing where it's just like social media, where you post something on Instagram or LinkedIn and people start commenting on it right away, they share it to more people. Yeah. So commenting is equal to like downloads and people consuming the episode. So in that first 3 days, a piece of content as a podcast is considered new for 3 days, for 72 hours. And it's considered old content. So while it's a new content, if you drive listenership and drive activity and people are consuming the episode, our organic discoverability is even more powerful, and people are searching those keywords. Now we're popping up more actively for, when people put in podcasting tips for my show or whatever. So it helps kind of juice the algorithm a little bit. So I challenge my listeners to eventually get up to 5 unique promotional assets in 72 hours. That's kind of my 72-hour window rule. And so like, I do things like, I'll do a static image post, I'll do carousel posts. I do a lot of face to camera videos just because I like doing that, or video clips or whatever. I'll live stream my newsletter, email marketing. I count that as a unique promotional asset. So you don't have to start with 5, but if you're already doing 5 or 7, then you just compress them all down and do the exact same thing, or just focus primarily on those first 72 hours. Make sure you get something out there within there. You want to give your current listeners a reason to keep listening, and hopefully attract a few new people as well.
And like an old one, like this episode came out like 2 months ago, but I'm going to post on social media about it in case anyone missed it the first time. Like, it's outside as well, outside the 72 window, but it's a kind of a different purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yes. I mean,
like the same post.
Yeah. Podcasts. Yeah. I mean, podcast episodes are assets, and I will repost old assets to promote episodes. I will promote old episodes within current episodes, where if I'm going like a solo episode and there's 7 tips about something, I've got over 500 episodes now. So I probably have a tip where I actually did a solo episode on each one of those tips. So I'll be like, hey, if you want to dive a little deeper on this one, and I did a whole episode on it, go check out this one. It's on link in the show notes. I reference podcast episodes as the base of what I talk about on stage when I speak on stage. So if I'm on there, I'm at a podcasting or a business conference, and I'm like, 5 strategies for blah, 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 I'll have one line that's the strategy, and underneath that, to go, I'll say, for more info, check out episode whatever of my show. Those are my slides. and I tell people at the beginning, when I start talking, get your phone out, pull up Podcasting Business School, because I'm going to give you some homework, and I want you to download these episodes to listen to on the way home. Yeah. So I crush it at online or live speaking engagements, because all these people are flying home, binge listening to all these episodes, and I've got all these discovery calls booked the next Tuesday when I go back to work. So yeah, old podcast episodes are assets that should be promoted, re-promoted, figure out any way that we can. I build email funnels out of them. So like, there's a lot of strategy there.
Well, you're one of the few people I've met that has more episodes than me. So you've got a lot of old assets there to capitalize on.
We are kicking assets.
So you've given us amazing, because everything that you've said is easy and it seems to be high return on investment. But we are rapidly coming to a close, which I find tragic because this is such awesome information. But like, if there's going to be any more strategies that you're going to recommend, like I'll give an example, like an email list, like to remind people that like for me, the email list, I hate the email list because I unsubscribe from everything. So I just assume that everyone wants to do that as well. Now, as it turns out, not everyone thinks like me. So, but some people love the email lists, like, or, we already talked about social media, or is there anything else that we can use to leverage to grow the audience?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on it earlier, guessing on other people's shows, but I've got a unique strategy around this as well. And I formed all these unique strategies because I've been going since 2015 and I just screw it up so many times. I eventually figure it out how to do it in a better way. Yeah. So I make the error, I reverse engineer it, I fix it, and I teach my audience about it. So like a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, are doing interview-based shows like you do. And when you're looking for people to pull onto your show, what I'd recommend doing is go to your category or a category of interest to your listeners or your show on Apple or Spotify in their top 200 rankings. So you could go in like some sort of health subcategory for this show and look at ranked shows and start inviting those top 200 ranked podcasters onto your show and make friends. And there's like an 80% chance that they will invite you to be on their podcast. And now you are being a guest on top 200 ranked podcasts. So I did this. I had a health show.
So it's not, what you're not doing is you're not proposing it as a podcast exchange.
Nope.
Because that's how often I'll word it. I'll be like, hey, would you like to cross-pollinate our audiences? But you're like, no, you're looking for the big dogs here and you just want them to be on your show. So instead of looking for people to be on their show, and the people that are more likely to do that are people that have smaller shows, that's interesting. It's like just remember, like when I was single, like if you give information about yourself, they're more likely to give information about them. And now you've started a conversation. Like you're giving, right? Yeah. And that's a sales technique also, right? Always be giving, right? You're giving.
And on those top 200 lists, I start at the back edge. Like don't start at the front edge because those have all the gatekeepers. But I'd use this technique for my health podcast back in 2015, 16, 17. And I was on 50 of the top 200 ranked shows. And my show went from nobody listening to 30,000 downloads a month and just killing it, because what happened was I invited somebody that was 190th ranked podcast on my show. And when you send that email in the title, it's like, I want you to be on my show. It's not, let's do an exchange. I want to be on your show. We get lots of those emails. Those aren't always well received, but I always open an email or message like, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast. Always. And most likely I always go. So have them on your show. You make friends, you add value. And as you get better at that, many, many, many of them will ask you to be on their show. And then let's say you're on the 190th ranked podcast, you go and you start looking at who they've interviewed, who's been on their show, whose show they've been on. And you can see, oh, that person that was ranked number 75, they already have a connection. Hey, would you mind making a warm introduction to so-and-so? And now you're through the gatekeeper, because somebody this is how I had like Gretchen Rubin on my show and Michael Hyatt and all these people that like I had no business being connected with. It was just from other top ranked podcaster connections. Yeah. And like I was getting on top 10 ranked shows where you can't get through the gatekeeper to access those people ever. So that strategy, it's a longer play, but man, it's so much more effective than spamming people asking to be on their show. You're going to be on good, shows that are being listened to. And now you're scooping up people, and like you got a bunch of personality, Brad. And like you go on a show, you're going to stand out in the health provider space for sure. And you're going to scoop up audience. So I think that a strategy like this could work extremely well for somebody like yourself.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. So if we have any physicians who are listening who want to start a podcast, or they've started a podcast and they're having trouble growing it, and so they want to turn to you, they want to consume some of your content, they maybe want to hire you for coaching, where do we find you? I mean, obviously just search on podcasting, because you will pop up at the top of whatever we happen to be searching. But like, if you want to, cut out the middleman there, where do they find you?
You can contact me directly on my website, podcastingbusiness.school. I just mentioned that you heard me on Brad's show, and I'll take good care of you. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of different resources on there. My website is very simple. And if you're going to listen to my show, I just dropped a few really good episodes. Episode 499 is really resonating with my audience right now. It's the 3 situations that cause podcasters to quit and how to avoid them. Start with episode 499 and check that out first. That's a great place to start. And I am not hard to find. If you email me, I will answer you back. If you message me, I will answer you back. No one ever pretends to beat me on the internet or my email inbox. I don't use AI or chatbots or anything or VAs or any initials of anything for any of that stuff. It's not my 12-year-old VA from the Philippines pretending to be me. It is me. And I like to do voice messages just to kind of prove that. So you'll get the big, robust podcaster voice. And if you're lucky, I may break into the, in a world full of podcasters seeking help. The movie trailer voice. You never know, but no, I love connecting with people. I love helping podcasters avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made. So Brad, I appreciate you having me on today to help a few extra podcasters.
Well, thanks so much for your time and your expertise. Thanks for listening. So please share it or like it or comment on a social media post or write us a 5-star review. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.